It's another Raw video from your favorite YouTube scout, Draft Raw Authentic. And like I said, it's a Raw video, people. So there will be no edits. Anyway, if you could tell by the title, then you know what this vid is about. It is about the interior linemen, the defensive tackles of the 2018 NFL Draft. Now, when I say interior defensive linemen or defensive tackles or whatever, I am talking about all defensive tackle prospects. So whether you are a one technique, which is a nose tackle in a 3-4, whether if you're a 3 technique, which is a regular defensive tackle in a 4-3, or your 5 technique, which is a defensive end / defensive tackle hybrid in a 3-4. Those are the guys that are, their hands on the ground and they pretty much are, they have the nose tackle in between. So you have your nose tackle, and on the sides of him, you have the 5 technique. So if you didn't know what that was. But this video is about all of these guys collectively. Now, like I do a lot of my other videos, if you've seen already, please check those out. I don't name all of the guys that are in the draft. Also, I don't try to name guys that are considered like late round guys that don't look that good to me. So I keep it to where I'm pretty much going to talk about the players that will get drafted in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round of the draft. Or the guys that are kind of making a little bit of a name for themselves. So, pretty much, you know what? Let's just get into it. First name on the list is a guy that I would say is a top 5 talent or top 10 talent. Whichever way, you know, how you think. I feel as though he's a top 5 talent. And that is Washington's defensive tackle hybrid, Vita Vea. Now, the reason why I say defensive tackle hybrid is he is the only interior lineman in this draft that I feel can play every interior line position in the NFL. Now, you know, people might say, well, can't most of them play all of them? Typically, the nose tackles are players that are around about 320 and higher. And they kind of, you know, take on a lot of blockers. They don't have a lot of stats, but they do their job really, really well. They only pretty much have one job to do. They're not looking for tackles. They're not looking for sacks. They're just looking to take up blocks and not to get pushed around. With a 4-3 defensive tackle, which is a 3 technique, those guys are looked to doing both trying to stop the run and rush the passer. Now, if those guys are not great pass rushers, it's not that big of a deal. And lastly, the 5 techniques are, like I said, they are hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle. So you look at them as being kind of pass rushers as well, but mostly they try to, you know, take on a lot of blocks so they can free up their linebackers, which in a 3-4, there's 2 middle linebackers, and then you have 2 outside linebackers that sometimes take up on blocks, but just hold the edge of the defense. Now, with Vita Vea, I feel as though he's probably the only interior lineman in this draft that can play all the positions. And the reason why I have him as my number 1 defensive tackle prospect in this draft. There's not much to really say about him because when it comes down to it, he's one of those guys that is electrifying, that is strong, that is quick, and do a lot of things. This is a guy that weighs 340 pounds and moves like he weighs 270. Honestly, it's so amazing to see this guy play. He reminds me a lot of a former Baltimore Raven, Haloti Ngata, which a lot of people have said, but it's true. Haloti Ngata was probably one of the only defensive tackle prospects in the last 10 years that came out that literally could play all interior defensive line positions. He could honestly play defensive end in a 4-3. Which is kind of crazy. And Vita Vea, I think, could do that. Only other guy in the NFL that I know of that was able to do that was Red Bryant, who used to play for the Seattle Seahawks. But anyway, Vita Vea, number 1 guy, to me should be a top 5 pick, but he won't get picked in the top 5, mainly because, you know, the quarterbacks. And he probably won't get picked in the top 10, which is kind of crazy. But he is a steal in the draft if any team after the top 10 teams do not pick him. He is the biggest steal in this draft, if that happens. But anyway, the next name on the list is Alabama's Daron Payne. Daron Payne is, like Vita Vea, have a lot of energy, energetic. This guy just runs, tackles. I mean, he is all over the field, and he plays 5 technique. Sometimes he actually do play nose tackle. If there was another player that can play every defensive interior line position, it would be Daron Payne. Those two guys separate themselves from every defensive tackle in this draft. And honestly, there's not much to say about him. If you follow the draft, then you would know the names Vita Vea and Daron Payne. These two guys are they're in a class of their own. And they are the 2 best defensive tackle prospects in this draft. Not much I need to say about them. But anyway, to get onto the list, I just want to put a disclaimer. When I was watching a lot of these defensive tackles on tape, I was disappointed because there wasn't as many prospects that I really, really loved. And that even doubles down for the defensive end one. My defensive end one will probably be a bad video because honestly I feel as though there's maybe 1 or 2 guys that are worth even talking about because I got so bored watching a lot of these players. Now the defensive tackles in this draft is not as bad as the defensive ends, but there were guys that they weren't as consistent as these top 2 guys. And I would say not even close to being as consistent. And so before I get into the rest of the names of the defensive tackle players that I do like, I want to go into the ones I don't like and also the ones that I'm a little so-so about because they're just some, questions I have. But they can still give you, something in the NFL. So I'm going to start off with my so-so list of the interior linemen. First is Maurice Hurst from Michigan. When I saw him on tape, I wasn't a huge fan. And this is a guy that is an undersized defensive tackle. Now, people are trying to compare him to Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald was a different monster. He's just a different player. He just plays the game a little bit different. Maurice Hurst, there was just times where he just got pushed around, or there was times where he just made, too many mistakes. There were times where he made some good plays, but there were too many times where he wasn't affecting the game. And for him to be talked about as a possible top 20 pick or first round guy, and him to be talked about as possibly being the next Aaron Donald, I was expecting to see magic, and I didn't see that. And so Maurice Hurst is on my so-so list, but I don't think he's a bad player. Another player on this list is Justin Jones from NC State. I like the other defensive tackle from NC State, and I definitely like the defensive end. But with Justin, the only inconsistency I had with him, for his size, I thought that he should get to the quarterback a lot more often. And there was a little bit inconsistency. I felt as though the other defensive tackle was a little bit better. Or not a little bit, was a whole lot better. But I did feel as though Justin was a pretty solid player. But I do wonder, was that because of the defensive end and the defensive tackle that he played next to? That's what I have to wonder when I think about Justin Jones when I watch him. And he's not as, for being a smaller guy than the other defensive tackle I like, he's just not as great of a pass rusher as I would like him to be for being the smaller person between him and the other defensive tackle, which I will talk about later. The next guy on this so-so list is Andrew Brown from the University of Virginia. He was up and down mostly when I saw him. I liked his energy. I liked the aggressiveness that he showed in most games, but it just wasn't consistent enough. And it was weird watching him because sometimes he was playing defensive end and then other times he was playing defensive tackle. So I really couldn't hone into who he was as a player, but I do think he's this guy that could do some stuff in the league. He's got the ability to hold the edge, and he definitely has the ability to rush the passer. But we'll see. And those so-so guys, I'm not saying that they're not going to be good. There's just concern that I have with those guys that I don't have concern with the guys that I like. The rest of the guys on this list are the ones I don't like. I'm not even going to just go into why I don't like them. I'm going to just name them. Trenton Thompson from Georgia. No. Rasheem Green from USC, and he's technically like a defensive end slash defensive tackle type of prospect. I didn't like him at all. And Kendrick Norton from Miami, there was another defensive tackle from Miami that I felt was a lot better than Kendrick Norton. And you can tell it was a huge difference. Not as big of a difference as was Justin Jones from NC State and the other defensive tackle. So I just want to get those names out of the way. And pretty much, you know what, let's just get to the rest of the names, and I will go back to that list later in the video. But anyway, now going to the next guys on this list. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 more players, okay? So hang on with me. Derek Nandi from Florida State. Like this player. He's a solid player. Not great, but definitely a solid player. I'd say is a definite starter in this league. He may not be the high end type of defensive tackle, but he will give you something when he comes into the league. And going into the 2 guys that I named, Miami and NC State, the next 2 names on the list, BJ Hill from NC State. He was around 320 pounds. A guy that could play nose tackle, actually, but is definitely a 4-3 defensive tackle. This dude, I love this tape. He was strong. He was fast. He was pushing guys around. And I can tell that it wasn't because of the defensive end that he was playing next to. This guy was actually really good. And I really like the tape that I saw from him. Definitely better than his counterpart, Justin Jones. But I will put it out there is that, like I said, Justin Jones is not bad at all. So, like I said, so less. But BJ Hill is definitely the better prospect. And I expect him to actually surprise people in the draft in terms of being picked higher than what you actually think. The next name on this list is RJ McIntosh from Miami. I really like RJ. There wasn't a lot of production in terms of stats and numbers, but what I saw from RJ was just, this guy's aggressiveness and energy was out of this world. And there's actually another player from Miami, a defensive end, who on Saturday, when I get into that video, that I really like from Miami too. Same thing, didn't put up a lot of stats, but you can see the potential in this player was very, very high. When I watch defensive tackles, I love seeing energy and aggression. And if I see that, I know you're trying. If I see a laziness, then I say, nah, I don't want that. But when I see energy and aggression, that's what I want to see. And I saw that in RJ McIntosh. So the numbers are not there, but that energy and aggression is there. And that is a huge thing for me. Next name on the list is Harrison Phillips from Stanford. Now, this is, guys, the prototypical nose tackle. He's not going to put so many stats on the board, but he's a guy that takes on blocks. He holds his own, and he's able sometimes to even shed blocks and make a play, on the ball carrier or the quarterback. This is a guy, he's an underrated type of nose tackle guy, because he's one of those nose tackles like maybe in a Vita Vea that could actually get sacks. And, most nose tackles are not great at getting sacks, but Harrison Phillips can. Now, going into the NFL, I'm not sure if that's going to hold up, because what I did see from Harrison Phillips was him using his strength more than him actually using technique. And going from college to the NFL, your pure athleticism, whether it's strength or speed, is not going to always work. You have to have great technique. So that's something that I think he needs to improve on. But there's definitely something there which you can work with. He's one of those guys that I could have put on my so-so list, but the reason why I put him on a guy that I definitely still did like was because I feel as though that there's, like I said, energy and effort is something that I hold huge. And I think he puts a lot of effort into what he plays. And the last name on this list is Taven Bryan from Florida. This guy, they said that he was going to be the next J.J. Watt. I don't see that. But what I do see is a guy that, if I was to have a ranking of these defensive tackles, even though I named him last, when I name players, they're not in the order of how good I think they are. I'm just naming these players, just going down the list. Taven Bryan would probably be the 3rd best interior lineman in this draft to me. And a lot of people have it that way as well. This is a guy that has the ability to rush the passer and has the ability to stop the run. He's not as energetic as Deron Payne or Vita Vea, which is why I wouldn't put him up in that category as those two, because those two are top 15, top 20 picks all day. But Taven is definitely a first rounder. If you get him late round, you're going to get somebody that in a year or two, he's definitely going to be a beast. He needs some work, but you definitely see all the potential with him. He backed it up with some stats. He backed it up with just his play and how teammates feel about him and how other teams in college viewed him and how the NFL scouting community views him. They say that he's definitely a good player, and I agree. So anyway, people, that was the last name on the list of the top defensive tackle or interior defensive lineman in the 2018 NFL Draft. Please, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, to check out more videos that I have. Please comment if you don't like what I had to say about some players in this draft, like a Trenton Thompson or Rasheem Green or Kendrick Norton. Please comment so we can debate. Please share this video so other people can join the debate and we can have this huge drafting community that just talks about strictly the draft and nothing else and the rookies that come out each and every year. And please hit that like button. I thank you for watching this video. I thank everybody that has subscribed to my videos, and I thank you for taking that time out. I'm going on this journey, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I will. Thank you, and goodbye.